With the Mueller report finally in the rearview mirror, real abuses of power are coming squarely into focus. From the Horowitz investigation into FISA abuse, to the Huber investigation into leaks, to Attorney General Barr's promise to investigate how and why the Trump campaign was spied on by our own federal government. A deep state reckoning is on the horizon. Joining us now with reactions, former South Carolina Congressman, Fox News contributor, former chairman of the Oversight Committee, second best chairman of the Oversight Committee, Trey Gowdy from South Carolina. Trey, thank you so much for joining us. I read the report, and I know you've read the report. I was really struck by this, how most of this information really was classified. I mean, I can't believe that they went to such great lengths and put out so much information. What was your take?
The same. Particularly on the coordination, the conspiracy, the collusion section, the sources and methods, I really thought about half of that would wind up being redacted. I can tell you, having been on the House Intelligence Committee and House Judiciary, we had a really tough time accessing some of the information that was then publicly disseminated yesterday.
Now, at the very end of the report, as I read, I want to put up this graphic here and read part of what it said at the end by Mr. Mueller. He said, based on the facts and the applicable standards, we are unable to reach a judgment. Accordingly, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. You've been a prosecutor for decades. Is that what the Department of Justice does, goes out and exonerates people?
No, thank goodness. Each of us, including the President of the United States, is presumed innocent. So you need not be exonerated. If you have sufficient evidence to indict someone, then do so. And then let a jury of 12 of your peers determine whether or not the evidence is sufficient. But to say that we don't have enough to exonerate, how would you do that anyway? I mean, you don't. The jury verdict is not guilty or innocent. It is guilty or not guilty. The burden is on the government. And if you have enough, Special Counsel Mueller or AG Barr, then indict. And if you don't, as you know, Jason, I was not a fan of this report being made public for the very reason you just cited. At least when you're charged, you can go to a trial, defend yourself, and have 12 of your fellow citizens say not guilty. Here, there is no jury. And if there were a jury, they'd be hung 50-50.
No, and I think that's the point. A part of this is the idea that I think it was a stab. I actually think it was a cheap shot at the end to say this does not exonerate him, because that is not what the Department of Justice does. The only one that can actually make you or put you into that guilty category is a jury of our peers. You and I both went through the issues with Hillary Clinton, everything from Benghazi to the emails and everything in between. How do you see how Donald Trump was treated differently versus, say, Hillary Clinton was treated differently?
Oh, gosh. How much time do you have? Just the duplicity in the D.C. media alone. President Trump answered questions that were sent to him by Mueller. I sent questions to a president once. They didn't even get acknowledged, much less answered, but there's no media outcry. The media was disappointed that the executive branch got to review an executive branch report before it was made public. See if you can follow that logic. We're mad that an executive branch report is being reviewed by the executive branch. Now contrast that. Secretary Clinton was investigated by an accountability review board that she picked. Cheryl Mills was able to read that report and offer changes. In fact, she did offer changes, no media outcry. So I can't speak for you. Jason, you and I were in D.C. the same amount of time. The most disappointing part of my 8 years is the duplicity of the D.C. media, far more than the Democrats. That's what I expected.
Explain to people a little bit more that headwind, because I felt it, you felt it, but that headwind was so different than what Donald Trump is dealing with. How they deal with Clinton and Obama, it was such a stark contrast.
Well, the D.C. media never met a Republican investigation that should have started, and they never met a Democrat investigation that should ever end. So they're thrilled that the next 2 years, and look, I heard your intro, I think the next 2 years are going to be just like the last 2 years. I don't think yesterday resolved anything. They're going to have more congressional hearings. The media will applaud it, as opposed to the hearings that you and I were part of. We were on defense, not just from the Democrats, but also from the media. So, look, I understand that Congress has a low approval rating, in some instances hard-earned. But lots of our fellow citizens also don't trust the media like they used to, and they need look no further than their own handling of Republican versus Democrat inquiries to see part of why that is.
How do you read this? There are 10 points on obstruction. I look at those and I think, you know what, gosh, they're giving all this criticism to Donald Trump for things he actually didn't do. How did you read it?
Well, Jason, let's go back to the beginning. There's nothing about this investigation that was normal. It's a counterintelligence investigation that was made public. That never happens. It's a criminal investigation where you're actually presumed guilty, and you have to prove your innocence. Remember, Adam Schiff had evidence of collusion before the investigation even began. Remember, 60 House Democrats voted to move forward with impeachment before Bob Mueller uttered a single solitary syllable. So that's not the justice system. That's a quasi-political investigation. Add to that, you're being accused of treason, a crime for which, by the way, you can be put to death. And make no mistake, that's what they were alleging, that candidate Trump colluded with a hostile foreign power to impact our democratic process. That is treason. So that's what they accused him of. I don't know how you would react, Jason, if you were accused of something that you did not do, which now Mueller has said you did not do. Somewhere between vigorously defending yourself and losing your mind is where you would have been. So, look, some of the stuff doesn't read well, but you have to put it in the context. No part of what this investigation is a traditional counterintelligence or criminal investigation.
Yeah, and look, I think if history writes the truth, it'll write that Donald Trump was more open and transparent than anybody I've ever seen before, and far more than Barack Obama that we dealt with. But Mr. Gowdy, thank you again for joining us. Coming up, no